Hi friends, Ellie Morrison here. Welcome to Eleanora Live, my IGTV series where I interview people all over the place from right here on my little pink couch in my home studio office in San Antonio, Texas. I'm thrilled to introduce you all to my guest today, Elizabeth Berrocal, who is the founder and owner of Center for Women and Family here in San Antonio, the first all-women's focused mental health facility in town. And it's dedicated fully to all of the needs of women, emotional, mental. And I wanted to introduce her to all of you in case those of you watching are in need of her services, but also just to talk about the importance of empowering and uplifting women in general, not only right now, but always. So please welcome to my little pink couch, Elizabeth Berrocal. Welcome, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Ellie. Nice to see you.
So nice to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thankfully, surviving, during this pandemic and, crazy stuff, but thankfully I cannot complain.
Good. And are you able to practice from your home virtually?
Thank goodness, Ellie, I am. I'm doing everything as of right now via FaceTime. It's been a little bit of a transition, but it seems to be working well. My patients are pretty loyal and they're great. So everything's been working out really well,
Well,
thankfully.
this is especially a time of need for those who are working with mental health professionals. I think that this has been such a challenging time, even for the most naturally, positive and free among us. And it's an essential time for you to be able to provide those services. And I know that you're surely helping everybody so much. So it's so great to hear that you're able to do this via FaceTime, because this is a very strange time for everybody.
Oh, Ellie, it's really unprecedented. Right now the suicide rate, it's the highest it's been, since World War II. And I mean, I think everyone can pretty much say that they have been experiencing or are experiencing, these very in-depth emotions like anxiety and depression that maybe they weren't necessarily suffering from before. But yeah, so it's been, if anything, I've been more busy, than usual, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to, we had a conversation editorially, which has just published, but I wanted to continue the conversation over this Eleanora Live platform because I just was so inspired and touched by your take on life and mental health and helping women. And, I wanted to share your services and what you do with all my friends on social media, with my little corner of the internet, because I have a feeling that you will be able to help so many people, more people than you've already helped it throughout the trajectory of your career. And you're on such a momentous path. And I wanted to sort of share your story with everybody. So would you be so kind as to sort of talk about your practice and what makes you different and the things that you do with your center that you have?
Absolutely. I opened up pretty recently, Ellie, the first all women's mental health clinic. So I just deal specifically with women's mental health. I love it. I feel like it was something that was very much needed here in the area. I think it's something that's needed, period, all over, but specifically here, in San Antonio, especially being the first, I think, I began noticing a need for women. I worked at the Pregnancy Care Center. I was doing all of my clinical hours there, and I really saw, a niche there, that women are in need of this mental health, and it could be anything ranging from anxiety to depression to postpartum issues to even infertility issues, Ellie. And, women, we go through such major transitions, really more at every stage of life, but we seem to be going through it a lot more periodically, I think, than men do. I give or take, every 5 to 7 years we transition. So I felt that it was very much needed, and I began to see, this gap where women's mental health wasn't being addressed.
No.
Here I am.
Yeah. I mean, it's so admirable what you're doing, and it's so necessary. And you know, I love to have real conversations, and I love to have honest conversations with the women that join me on my little pink couch.
Absolutely, I love it. I love it.
And one of the things that I've been thinking about in familiarizing myself with your story is this pandemic situation has been particularly interesting, even for me and my mental health, because I at first was dealing with it okay, you know, and what I find in my own life is where my anxieties sort of they ooze, they eke out, and they're disguised as, you know, different outlets than what the root of the actual issue I think really is. And it's something that I've learned to identify throughout my adult life. And now I'm in my 30s. And so this looks a lot different than when I was in my early 20s. And one of the things that this pandemic has sort of created in my mind is this new sense of, wait, it's like an existential crisis a little bit. Like, wait, now that we know that everything can shift overnight and on a dime, are you really sure you're doing what you really want to be doing? And it's created this interesting sort of conflict within me that has just reared itself like right about now. You know, like about 6 months into this whole deal, I'm thinking, I'm all of a sudden finding myself, and maybe it's because my husband went back to work this week. And it's an interesting thing because we've sort of been creating together. We've been in our place. We've been loving it. We've been rejuvenating. We've been trying to make everything out of this as sort of a positive as possible for us. And we're very lucky that we've been able to do that, and we realize that. But now that he's off to the office, I sort of am like, wait, what? It's like taking the wind out of my sails in a weird way. Even though I'm still very busy and I've still got projects, it's caused me to reflect in ways that I didn't quite anticipate would happen. And I just wanted to sort of like throw that out to you.
Yeah, I love it. You know, Ellie, I'm so glad you brought that up because, you know, I really do think in regards to this pandemic, you know, we all take things in very different ways. However, you're absolutely right. Anxiety does come in a very sneaky way. You know, it seems to kind of build up upon itself. And, you know, when you started with a molehill, all of a sudden you have Mount Everest, you know, in front of you. And anxiety, it tends to build in that way. You know, in mental health, it's a very difficult thing to kind of process, you know, because a lot of times we can't really, like you were saying, you can't really pinpoint exactly what it's coming from, or, you know, is it something from the past? Is it something that maybe triggers you? And I think during this particular time, what's happening to us now is that we're forced to come face to face with some things that maybe we weren't forced to before, Ellie. I think that, you know, it's the world itself is in a very transitionary period, and we are forced to change with, you know, and humans, we're creatures of habit. We like habit for the most part. We like organization, and you know, when we're thrown this huge, you know, cross into our path, you know, we don't know what to do with it. So you're right, it does bring to light some very existential questions about ourselves, our purpose, what we're meant to do, you know. But I think the key, Ellie, in this is really reflecting upon what genuinely makes you happy now. What genuinely floats your boat? You know, what I think that we're in a time where people are beginning to re-examine that we all are vulnerable. You know, we all have to go through our own situations in order to become better. And that's one of the messages that I really want to get across is that, you know, there in transition, there is pain. You know, we have to go through a painful period in order for us to grow, Ellie. So what we do with that pain and that transformation is completely up to us. You know, and I think that this pandemic forces us to understand that although we have our partners, although we have our loved ones, ultimately, you know, these decisions remain on us. And that's difficult for people to understand and to face.
one of the things that I loved about your interview and our conversation in the written form was that you talk so much about your philosophy about growth and the power of pain. And I really, that really resonates with me, because I think that, you know, adulthood and womanhood in particular, and we're all experiencing pain points. We're all experiencing difficult times and challenges, and that is part of life, despite what our instant gratification, social media highlight reel culture,
I know.
sort of portrays. And I think that this power of pain is so beautiful, the way that you articulate it. Can you talk a little bit about your philosophy on that and how you incorporate that into your treatments at your practice?
Absolutely. You know, I work with a lot of trauma patients, Ellie, a lot of women who have undergone, sexual abuse in their past, or they're still undergoing an emotional abuse, in their current relationships, or domestic abuse. And I believe that pain can either keep us down, it's going to transform us regardless, right? So it's either going to keep us down, or we have to learn and grow from it. We have to take into consideration what it does for us, and make the decision to move forward. And it's way easier said than done, especially when you're talking with women who have gone under severe sexual trauma is a big one. It's way easier said than done, but I do believe people are absolutely resilient. I think our mind and our body are made in perfection, and I think we are meant to face challenges. We are meant to face struggles. It's learning how to deal with them. And, no one is exempt. I really want to highlight that. No one is exempt, Ellie, from pain, and it can come in many forms, like I keep saying, and relationship pain. I'm seeing a lot of women who are going through situations that, it may not be horribly abusive, but it's just as toxic for them, and it's just as painful for them, in many ways. And, it's learning how to deal with that and moving forward, is the key to that.
Mm-hmm. And now, dealing with that, what sort of treatments do you offer in your practice?
I do EMDR therapy is a big one that I love, and really what it is that I use bilateral stimulation. So long story short, I have a machine that by eye movements, which is the bilateral stimulation, we're able to kind of treat trauma. EMDR therapists, we believe that trauma is kind of stuck in the brain. Like, for example, like a ball of yarn, and what EMDR therapy does through bilateral stimulation is that it begins to pull it apart, and it begins to unravel it so that the neurological processes are still flowing and still moving, and the pathology isn't stuck in there, if that makes sense. I mean, they're very technical terms, but so we're just unraveling and unsticking what was done in the past. And I mean, it was really made for PTSD, people coming home from the military, and it worked wonders on them. And it's something that I absolutely use alongside talk therapy. I believe strongly that mental health is a very integrated process. I believe that we have to attack these pathologies in many different forms. And it also includes, body, mind. I believe strongly taking care of your body results in a healthy mind, healthy body, healthy mind. And I really do believe that. I believe that everything coexists with each other and in a perfect form.
I have certainly seen evidence of that in my own life. And when I was, I think back to when I was in college in those years, and I had a very unhealthy lifestyle and was processing on my own some traumas that I had in high school. And it was very different from when all of a sudden I started taking care of my body when I was in my mid-20s. And it was all of a sudden I found the worrying thoughts and the negative cloud and all of that I faced on a day-to-day basis in my earlier adult years sort of just completely disappeared. And they would, not altogether, but on a day-to-day basis, it was all of a sudden I started noticing everything I noticed was good. Everything I noticed was joyful. Everything I felt was inspiring. And it literally was when I changed the way that I ate and the way that I exercised, and how much water I drank and all of that. And so for me, mind and body has absolutely been connected, and I wish that more people knew that, I really do.
I know, and what's difficult, don't get me wrong, I believe that medication is necessary, given the circumstances. The psychotropic medication is absolutely necessary in many cases. But I think a lot of issues can also be resolved with lifestyle change, with intense talk therapy, and with other alternative therapies such as EMDR, meditation, hypnosis. There's so many options that are available to us, Ellie, that a lot of people, they don't know about, and so I'm just really trying to get the word out there that there are alternative therapies, there are other things that we can do. That is such a huge process of our self-care. I mean, a lot of people think that self-care is, going for a mani and a pedi, which I get. It's great. Don't get me wrong. Everybody loves a mani. But, there's so much more to it. Self-care is taking care of yourself by eating right, by doing the right exercise. And I'm a firm believer that if someone isn't in therapy, then they should get in therapy, because it's like exercise for the brain, exercise for the soul and the spirit.
Yeah, this is something that I have not yet done for all of the self-care that I believe in. And I want to talk about this because my assumption is that I can't afford therapy, and I think that that's most people's assumption. And just because insurance may not cover it in some certain circumstances, and I don't want to incur that extra cost. And I'm trying to be responsible, but I also learned through our conversation with your article that one of the parts of the population that you're most passionate about serving is the underserved women. And so I want to talk about this and how you make your therapy services accessible to so many more women than who would typically be able to have these services.
Absolutely. Ellie, I'm so glad you brought that up, because we have in every big city, there's just an incredible amount of underserved, underprivileged people and women. We're so vulnerable. We're vulnerable as it is. So when you add all of these exterior factors into play, it really makes us at the bottom of the totem pole, unfortunately. So I really try hard to work with these women. I volunteered a lot of my time before. But right now, what I like to do is that I work on a sliding scale. And a lot of times I do it pro bono. If somebody can't afford to see me, then I'll definitely work with them. EMDR, unfortunately, is a very costly type of therapy. It's very hard here in San Antonio to find something that most people can afford to do weekly or even monthly, just because it is a pricey type of therapy. But I absolutely do work on sliding scale in regards to that. I try hard to stay away from insurance companies. They're a headache for me. They're a headache for my patients. And, I try to work in the private pay sector, but I absolutely do. I encourage, women to come to me, even if they have financial difficulties, in doing so, because I love to work with women, to get better, Ellie. It's important for me. It's rewarding to see someone get better throughout the course of time, and empowering women just by simple and kind words. I think that a kind word and a kind gesture can do so much for somebody. It can make or break somebody's day, and I think it's so important, especially now when anxieties are high, tension is high, that we lift one another up, because we're already, as a whole, we're kind of down in the moment.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for people to do that for each other.
Mm-hmm. I think part of what makes you, in just reading your story, part of what makes you fascinating and also so empathetic and able to walk in so many different women's shoes of different situations is that you've spent a lot of time outside of the US, and you've done a lot of your studying in Spain, and you've lived abroad. And can you sort of go into that a little bit about, you have such a passion for working with women who are from abroad, they're immigrating, they're all these different, I think as women, even if it's not trauma, there's there's always something that internally we're struggling with, or we're facing, or we're trying to get through. And I think having the perspective of knowing other women's struggles around different parts of the world, and then relating that back to our life in the US, I think that sets you apart. And I'd love to hear you talk about sort of your background and where you've lived and what your passions are and how you developed them, and how you sort of got here from.
Ellie, I'm born and raised here in San Antonio. It's my home. But at 18, when it was time to go to college, I decided that, I needed to go abroad, and all my friends were going to Austin and, fun places, California. And I decided that I needed to kind of, use this time to kind of help launch me, in every way, shape, or form. I wouldn't even know where to begin, because I feel like those years were extremely instrumental, in every way, Ellie, in my growth and how I thought, how I felt, how to live alone. I think that it's important that women, at a certain time in their life, it's important to be able to be by yourself. It's important to be your own best friend, and to make friends with yourself. I got to experience and meet so many different people. I have friends, thankfully, all over the world. I spent some time in Egypt. I spent some time in Lebanon. I spent some time in places that, I never would have thought, a small town girl would be, and I loved every second of it, and I noticed, Ellie, then, reflecting back, I noticed then that women are women regardless of where we are at. Someone that's the same as they are in Egypt, as they are in Mexico, as they are here. We all go through the same situations, and that's motherhood. Balancing career and work, that's marital issues, we have commonalities, and I do believe strongly that we are somewhat of a sisterhood. I can pick up my girlfriend in London and pick up another girlfriend in Dubai, and we're pretty much going through the same things. We're in our 40s, and we're going through the same type of issues. And I think that there's situations that women go through that transcend barriers, boundaries, passports.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Speaking of, there must be something to the different stages of our lives as women, and those sort of developmental milestones for us, and also the pressures from societal constructs that accompany those decades, if you will. I'd be curious, because I am currently mentoring a early 20s aged professional young woman who lives in Salt Lake City, Utah, and she wants to move to New York City to pursue a career in theater. And I just spoke with her last night, and it really got me thinking about, if you could go back to that age, maybe let's say 18 to 22, and you could tell yourself something, what's the one guiding lesson that you would tell your younger self, knowing now what you do? I'd be interested to talk about that.
Yeah, that's a difficult question to answer, and between the years of 18 and 25, they're really tumultuous years.
Oh, for me, the worst.
We're still growing. Yeah, they're very hard. And believe it or not, this is when depression rears, these ages. And I wasn't exempt to that. I was going through some difficult periods and trying to learn to live alone and manage myself in a big city and, study and work and, find my way. But I think that the thing that I would tell my 21-year-old self is that um, I would tell myself to learn that the painful processes, the painful periods are all going to be worthwhile in the end. You know, I believe that we're in a constant phase of learning. I believe that we learn from each experience, Ellie. You know, and I would definitely tell my 21-year-old self, you know, pain is growth.
Yeah.
Pain is growth. You
Yes.
know.
I think that's very powerful. Even, yeah, the power of pain.
Mhm.
I think at that age too, what I didn't yet know was that anything that I was facing, anything that I thought was a big deal in my life emotionally, I was one of a few, you know, women around me who were also going through whatever I was thinking I was going through at that age.
Mhm.
And you're never alone. And I think that I'm also grateful that social media was not a thing.
I know, I know. I always say that. Good Lord.
Facebook was just starting when I was in college, and so it was just a very different ordeal. You know, we didn't have
Mhm.
the smartphones with the Instagram was,
Yeah, yeah.
and so we were so in person, you know, that we
Mhm.
didn't have this element of isolation that I think kids face now with the social media apps. But
Yeah.
regardless, you think in your own head at that age that, you know, I'm the only one who feels this, or I'm the only one who knows.
Right,
It's so
right,
not the case, and so often just having somebody in your life that you can offload things to and not
right,
keep them to yourself, I think is
right.
so important. And I wish that I had known earlier,
Mhm.
even though I had a good sense of perspective, which helped,
Mhm.
but I think it was just more of like, you have to rise above whatever the circumstances are, and you have to use this in order to fuel your future. And if
Absolutely.
that, I think that is what I would tell myself if I
Mhm.
were back in those days.
Right.
You know, if I could go back and tell her that, yeah,
I know.
yeah,
I know. And you know, it's hard for us to, you know, and during that age, sometimes your own self is what your own self is your own worst enemy. You know, if we could just during that age and even now, gosh, you know, get past our self doubts, you know, and understand that we are good enough, we are smart enough. You know, we're all of these positive attributes, Ellie, that I don't think we tell ourselves enough. You know, I think that social media, you know, projects a very unrealistic bar for many, many people. You know, and it's becoming, you know, even more prevalent now that we have a lot more time on our hands and, you know, we're scrolling through all of these picture perfect things. But it's important for me to get across that that's not reality. It's not reality at all, you know. And when we take a good look at ourselves and a good look at others, I think that we begin to understand that. You know, it's easier said than done, right? I mean, there's so many things that I can say, and it's hard to practice, but I think the act of trying to practice says so much, you know. And it's like I told you before, I think that true growth is in all the little baby steps. It's, you know, we don't wake up one day and run a marathon. We get up one day and we start walking, and then we transition to running, and then we transition into running miles, and you know, and then we move forward, and then we propel. You know, it's
and I think learning to enjoy that process.
yes.
You know, this is something that my husband and I talk about a lot, and we've been really trying to work on in our household, is removing that mentality of I'll be happy once I blank.
Yeah. Yes,
And
Ellie.
in the early
Yes.
20s, we were just, and we met when I was 22 and he was 23, which was just a
Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
now we're in our 30s and we've been married almost 5 years, and here we are. But
Right.
um,
Right. Right.
if we could go back to our younger selves and
Mm-hmm.
shake them and say, like, forget what everyone is pushing on you, you know,
Right. Right.
find joy in the day-to-day processes of what you are working toward. That is what
Right.
life is about, because when you're
Right.
rushing to get to these milestones, you miss all the beautiful things in between. And then what if you don't hit the goal? What if you don't, accomplish that milestone because you're so focused on this nebulous thing that you think is going to bring you happiness, like oh, I want to make $1 million, or, oh, I want to, these things that just, these
Yeah.
messages that we pick up from I think our society and our culture that tell us that means happiness, and when in fact it's the littlest moments on the day to day when you're really in tune and you're really aware and you know what brings you joy. That's it. That's what life is about.
Right.
And
Right.
I think that, like, I feel sorry for, especially, I feel like people my age, in the late 20s, the early 30s, I see a lot of just going along the hamster wheel and
Yeah. Yep.
missing out on what are some really beautiful things that are really joyous about life and connecting with other people. And I think that, I don't know, I just hope that we can start to talk about things like this more, and
I know.
in our society and our culture make this more prevalent, that
Absolutely.
not about the things you acquire. It's not even about massive career milestones like you think it is, It's more about finding fulfillment in the day to day, and then those things will all stack up as a sort of a byproduct of that process.
Oh, absolutely, Ellie. Absolutely. And just to piggyback off of that, like I was saying earlier, each transition in life, every 5, 8, maybe 10 years, we transition. And, I definitely noticed that in this year, from 39 to 40, there's been this incredible shift. There's this feeling of understanding that although my life isn't perfect, and I may have definitely taken the longer route instead of the shorter route and many different things, I'm okay with that. Like I've come to the realization finally at 40 that I'm okay with that. I'm okay with how I chose to live my life and the decisions I made along the way. And I think it's important to realize that I don't regret anything that I did. And I think it's so important for people to understand that although they may repent some things that I've done, or perhaps certain decisions, but living on regret is so hard, and it's so hard to move forward with that. And you're right, it is this hamster wheel that we get on, that we put ourselves on, that's very difficult to get off. And the earlier that we realize that, the better it is, and I do not believe that it's too late for anybody to realize that. I believe it's better late than never, and that includes women in our 60s and our 70s. At some point we're going to get to the phase where we're accepting of ourselves. We love ourselves for who we are, what we are, how we represent ourselves, what we look like, what our body shape is, and it's coming into that acceptance and being okay with that, Ellie.
Yeah. And Elizabeth, one of the things that I struggle with at this point in my life is, am I doing enough? Have I done enough? Am I doing enough? And I know that that's irrational, but I just have this, it's like, okay, I have this fear that, okay, it's time for me to eventually, if we're going to start a family, I don't have forever.
Right.
And then in this pandemic, it's become like very aware. I mean, I've become very aware of this, like, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough? Did I not do something? Am I not on some sort of path that I should have been on? Am I really doing what I want to do? These things it's constant in my head. And even if I'm so fulfilled and happy doing certain projects, like doing these interviews and all of it, it still creeps in. And I don't know if you have any suggestions maybe of how to sort of calm that, because I know that I'm not alone in this. I want to just sort of out myself with it because I think
I love it. Oh, Ellie, I love that you're so authentic and you put yourself out there, and you're absolutely right. And let me tell you that we all go through this. I think the same thoughts every day. Now, I do think that when you begin to get deeper into the things that you genuinely love and genuinely enjoy, I think that those feelings begin to diminish. Um, and I believe that every one of us has a craft, has a talent, has something that we're good at, that we thoroughly enjoy. And it's up to us to discover that, and I think that once we do, those anxieties do subside. And like we talked about earlier, they may rear up in something else. And that could be possibly, a lifelong battle that you carry, or that I carry, or that the next girl carries. And that's okay. That it's okay to think certain thoughts. I'm a strong believer that when you're kind to yourself, and when you understand, and you wake up in the morning and you say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to do what I can today, and that's going to be sufficient. I think that it helps tremendously. Being kind to yourself. Again, it goes back to becoming your own best friend. Ellie. It's hard. It's hard. And we all go through that. But I absolutely, I'm in agreement with you. I think that we all go through these situations, and we all think these thoughts. Am I doing enough? Am I on the path that I'm meant to be? And I think when you genuinely love something and you enjoy doing something, I think then you are definitely on the right path. I think what you're doing here is incredible. I love, love, love your Instagram, your lives. I think that they're so instrumental, in kind of helping women get different perspectives on very different things. And I love that, Ellie. I love that you're authentic. I love that you're vulnerable. And you're very on point with how the world is transitioning. We're transitioning to become authentic and more vulnerable and to be ourselves. And I think you're at the very top of the crest riding that wave in. So I think you're good.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I mean, it's been a journey, but I think one of the things that I wish wasn't the case, but I'm grateful for it, was because it's what led me to sort of the messages of empowering women that I became drawn to in my mid-20s as a creator. Was that I found that in my early career, all I wanted was a female mentor. All I wanted were older women to take me under their wing and mentor me in certain office situations in my early career. And I didn't find that. I actually found the opposite to be true. And I wasn't even somebody who was breaking any rules. I was following all the rules I was doing, but I found, I'm not sure why. I've done a lot of reflecting on it, because what could I have done to repel these women? But I never found that. And when I transitioned out of the traditional office environment, and sort of came to terms with the fact that I was really being bullied by a lot of women, as opposed to mentored, I told myself, I was 27, and I told myself I'm never going to be that woman ever.
Yeah.
And I was then inspired to I made it my mission to put messages out into the world that were the opposite of the things that I felt, in the office environment. And so far I hope it's helped people, but several years in, it's a constant evolution. And with the new technologies and new mediums and whatever, I think the thing still rings true, is that I strive to always be very open and authentic and honest, but positive, because I want women to be picked up as opposed to discouraged. And that's why I'm so drawn to you and your practice and what you do.
So sweet.
You're doing the same thing, just in the mental health world, and in San Antonio in particular, which is the 7th largest city in the nation. I know there are tons of women who need you. Me included. Me included.
Me included. All of us.
Well, yeah. I know that this is just the beginning of what's going to become of your brand and your. And I want to see you on more, on podcasts, on TV shows, on all of this, because you have such an important message that I think will help so many women. And obviously, if you're watching this and you haven't yet read the extended interview conversation that Elizabeth and I had via editorial. Please go read it on Eleanora.co because it is so inspiring. It just is, it's really uplifting, and I think it's a message that everybody needs to hear, no matter the age, no matter the stage of life. So Elizabeth, I wanted to really thank you for taking the time to talk to me and also trusting me to help you tell your story, because I don't take it lightly.
Oh, Ellie, thank you. Thank you, for allowing me to come on and for being you, and for being the great person that you are. I know if anybody's going to do amazing things, it's you. You have an incredible future ahead of you, Ellie. Don't lose focus. And about the mentor thing, I get it. I get it because I agree with you 100%. I think that female mentors are so imperative, are so imperative. And it's unfortunate that we can also be our own worst enemies, we being women. Women many times try to really destroy other women for reasons I still don't fully understand, and I don't think I ever will. But on the same token, I think that the mean girl syndrome is so outdated. To be a bully is so, outdated, and it's so not progressive, and it's just so deconstructive, and it just, it's all of these things. So you just keep plowing forward, and as you begin to really, put yourself out there, I'm certain that you're going to come across some very wonderful people that are going to be very instrumental to you, to your career, and even on a personal level, Ellie. But yeah, so I long story short, I love being here. I could talk to you for hours, and I wanted to say thank you for your time.
Thank you. And can you tell everybody how they can get a hold of you? If they would like to reach out to you to inquire about your services or to learn more about you. I know you're on Instagram.
Yes, I'm on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is Queen of Therapy. So you can find me on that, and I am hopefully going to be starting the podcasting and the vlogs and everything else. Yeah. And I also want to get into the speaking. I think it's so important, even though I'm extremely, I have an extreme version of stage fright. I think that the message is so imperative to get across. I think that that's so much bigger than any stage fright that I've ever had. It's just to relay the message about the power of pain and the empowerment of ourselves and of each other, and especially during this time right now. So, you can contact me via Instagram. I'm also being represented by Ziglali Herrera. You can find her on X Level Talent. So just there are ways. My website is www.centerforwomenandfamily.com. And yeah, there's many ways to get hold of me.
Well, I'll be linking to all of those things so that everybody can find you. And thank you again, Elizabeth, for taking the time to do this. You really are just such a treasure and such a calming force. And I wish every woman could have you in their lives, because you're inspiring and empowering. So keep doing what you're doing. You're going to change the world. I really, truly believe it.
Thank you, Ellie. You're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, Elizabeth.
Bye, Ellie.
Bye.
I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.